Hello and welcome to our 25th episode of our Ellie.Talks podcast. Today we will share again about the inspiration, information and connections into the world of sustainable textiles and fashion. Welcome! Today we have a host, Mr. Dirk Vantyghem, and Dirk is Director General of Euratex. Euratex is the European Federation of Textiles and Fashion as well. So when I look on the website of Euratex, I read that Euratex is an abbreviation for the European Apparel and Textile Confederation. It is a European trade association representing the interests of the textile and clothing industry in Europe, of course. Euratex's mission is to promote and defend the competitiveness and sustainability of the European textile and clothing industry at both the European and international levels. Phew, have to catch a breath there. And the topic of today's interview is actually to talk about the importance and go into a deep dive on the competitiveness of our European textiles and fashion industry. And of course, we have the ideal guest for that today. So Dirk, if I can call you Dirk today.
Dirk,
so what we also, we always like to start with getting to know the person to whom I'm talking today. So what I would like to share also with our listeners and viewers is what are you really passionate about as an individual? Can be both inside or outside your working area. So something you would like to share with our listeners today?
Sure. Well, first of all, Julie, thank you for the invitation. Good to be here, to be part of the Ellie podcast series, 25th edition.
Yes.
I'm very honored to be in that edition. And before we get into textile strategy, me personally, what am I passionate? I'm passionate about my family. I'm passionate about my origin, which is West Flanders. So I
share that.
I work for the last 30 years in a European context, in a European bubble. I speak English and French every day, but it's always good to be back home, so to speak, to come back home also today. So my origin being in Roeselare, raised there, studied there, kissed in my youth. Again, my family, my 3 lovely girls that I have, wife, born and raised in a big family, 7 children. So that's
a lot of textiles.
A lot of textiles also. And for the rest, from a private perspective, being active, sports, mountains.
Okay.
Mountains more than sea. So I'm more, you have these 2 types, you know, you have the sea people and the mountain people.
Yeah.
I'm more the mountain person.
Okay. So you have some mountains to climb, I can imagine. So can you maybe share something about your day-to-day business? How does an average day look like for you? If there is a thing like an average day.
Well, that's the point. Probably there's no standard day. Running Euratex, and you described, our role is to represent, to defend the interests of this very wide and complex European textile industry. So on an average day, it's first of all about representation, so communication with Commission officials, with members of the European Parliament to explain what are the concerns, the needs, the problems of the textile industry. So this kind of external representation, speaking at events, conferences in Europe, outside Europe, that's part of the daily job, I would say. It's also, our membership is very broad. It's the whole of Europe. It's fashion, it's technical textiles, it's home textiles. So it's a very broad range of membership. So it's very important for me to keep a close and smooth relationship with that membership. So I spend a lot of time in keeping everybody on board, I would say, because there are different interests within this big textile family. So a lot of, keeping contacts, diplomacy, etc. And of course, on a normal day, it's, Euratex it's like a small company. We have 15 people in Brussels that you need to take care of. You have your little budget to take care of. So daily management of the office. So that's also, I'm a Director General, but at the same time, you need to look after very small operational things So that makes a very, I guess, diverse set of activities that I have.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about the organization, Euratex, maybe about the history. When and why was it founded?
Technically, legally, Euratex exists since 1996, but the organization, or let's say the European textile representation, exists for many, many more years. But so Euratex, as a legal body, was actually a merger between the European Textile Federation and the European Apparel Federation. So textiles and apparel used to be different, separate.
Like in Belgium.
Like in Belgium, indeed. So back in '96, some people had the wisdom, I would say, to come together and to create one single body representing European Textile and Apparel Association. And since then, we exist, obviously based in Brussels, within the European bubble, with this, as you said before, this broad mandate to represent the entire European textile value chain, from the fiber makers down to the final product, whether this is home textiles, whether it's fashion, technical textiles, as I said, the whole range.
Okay, and what would be the value for the textile and fashion companies of a federation like Euratex? What are your
Why do we
key
exist?
selling points?
Why do we exist?
Raison d'être.
Yeah, well, because as you probably know, around 80% of rules and regulations and standards that impact on companies here in Belgium, Flanders, so also on textile companies, about 80% of those rules are decided at European level. So before they become Belgian law or Flemish law, they are first, designed, engineered at European level. So if the textile industry wants to have an impact on how that framework is being shaped, created, that's where you need to be. Okay. And that's why you need to have a European body that tries to make an influence at the source, I would say. That is the raison d'être. So impacting on the policy making, on the regulatory framework, promoting the textile industry, which is at least as important or equally important. So to make sure that our policymakers at European level realize that there is still an important textile industry in Europe, because many of them textiles, they think Bangladesh, garments.
So let's repeat that. There's still a very important textile industry in Europe.
192,000 companies.
Well, that's significant. Yeah.
Turnover of this whole textile family in the EU, I'm talking just EU, turnover is around 165 billion euro. 1.3 million people working for the industry.
Yeah.
So
still significant.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have been a Director General since September 2019. What have you seen as general trends or innovations in this industry? What triggers you?
So yes, I joined almost 4 years ago now. Quite new, coming from a different background, from a European background, but nothing to do with textiles. And I would say it's been very interesting, to put it mildly. It's been a bit of a roller coaster, to be honest. You all know that, linked to what happens around us. End of 2019, we had COVID, the lockdown, which was a dramatic crisis for the whole industry, for the whole society. There was a recovery, but then we had the war in Ukraine, the energy crisis, inflation, consumer confidence, that. So I often use, when making presentations, we have a kind of what we call a business confidence barometer that measures how companies feel about the future on a monthly basis. And if you look at this chart, for many years it's been kind of up and down a little bit, more or less stable. Since 2019, it's been like this. So as I said, it's been literally a roller coaster. But at the same time, which maybe we'll talk about it later, which also gives maybe some opportunities to rethink the way we organize and the way we run our textile industry in Europe.
Yeah.
So in every crisis, there's an opportunity. It's a slogan, but it's probably true.
It's probably true. So, what about the digitalization and sustainability? I think that's always kind of the twin transition you are speaking about. How did you see that evolving after COVID or during COVID?
Yeah. So, well, as you know, indeed. So European Union is pushing very much. It's a bit of a mantra for this twin transition, digital and green transition. Hoping that by pushing the industry, not just the textile industry, but the entire European industry towards more digitalization and towards being more sustainable, that this is the key to develop a kind of a long-term competitive business model. There's a lot that needs to happen to be successful in that transition. So as Euratex, we support that vision and therefore need to help our companies to digitalize, to become more sustainable, and that translates into many, many, many things. So fundamentally, we support that vision, but of course, at the same time, we need to be very careful that our companies can remain competitive in the global context. Textiles at large is officially, according to the European Commission, the second most globalized sector of the European economy. So that means the pressure from outside is enormous. So going digital, going green, yes, but at the same time, staying alive is equally important. And so it's the whole discussion, the whole reflection that we need to have, that the whole strategy that we need to build must be to reconcile this digitalization, being sustainable, at the same time remain competitive. So how to connect those dots, that is the key on which we work on a daily basis.
Yeah. So we talked about the what. Let's also zoom in a little bit about the how. So at Ellie.Connect, we built our services on 3 pillars: connect, inform, inspire. So let's start with what is, in my opinion, the most important one. I would presume for Euratex as well, which is about connection. So I think collaboration is really key to success in any industry. Can you maybe explain a little bit about what the importance of collaboration is between not only the regions in Belgium, Flanders, but also on a European level? What the added value of collaboration there is?
Yeah, sure. I must say when I started at Euratex, so 3.5 years ago, I was a little bit surprised by the lack of collaboration, even within the textile sector. Because again, within Euratex, as I said, we have the spinners, we have the weavers, we have the finishers, we have everybody, and there's a lot of silos there. And me, maybe naively, innocently, why is there no more collaboration? So I think it starts within our value chain, within the strict kind of textile value chain, that there needs to be more cooperation. That's for sure. But more than that, and certainly as Euratex, I try to push that. We need to collaborate, let's say, in the wider, what I call textile ecosystem. We need to work more closely with the chemical industry, with the textile machine makers, with the brands, with the retailers, because we're all in that same boat, literally, and that boat needs to make this big transition that we just said. Alone, we cannot do that. As a single company, as a single spinning company, you can't. So we need to join forces in developing new technology, in setting new standards, in making sure that we play by the same rules. That requires cooperation. And so I'm a big, not a fan, I push within Euratex to have this more closer cooperation, and even from a statutory perspective, we are now having what we call partner companies who join Euratex, who are not strictly speaking within the textile family, but who have a big impact on what we do. So
Yeah.
again, textile machineries, big brands, they become part of this ecosystem. And again, developing solutions, discussions, finding a new business model for, again, the wider textile ecosystem.
Yeah.
And by the way, this is a vision, a strategy, which is also followed by the Commission, by the European Commission. They have developed this kind of industrial strategy 2 years ago, identifying some priority sectors, 14 priority sectors, and textile is one of them, which is in itself is always good. They recognize textiles is important, but their concept is they talk about the textile ecosystem.
Yeah.
And again, they have this vision of a broader perspective, who has an impact on the textile industry, and how can we bring everybody together to work more together. So anyway, sounds a bit maybe fluffy, but it's very important to have this, to have a different state of mind, what I'm saying, within the industry, because that's part of the future. Sure.
And I can totally relate to that, because this is what Ellie.Connect is also about,
Sure.
Including as well like software companies when it comes
Yeah.
to traceability, social economy, when it comes to circular economy. I think we had some great examples in previous episodes on the Ellie.Talks as well, but I truly believe that the broader ecosystem is a key to our success as well. One of the fields where collaboration is also important, let's come back to that, is also sustainability. Then, I think Europe is definitely in the forefront, I would say, when it comes to implementing sustainability. This is what we all believe. Is it truly that? And do you also see if some of the initiatives in Europe are also implemented in other regions? How do you see that crossover effect internationally?
Sure. So yes, indeed. So Europe is moving forwards, fast forwards, in pushing the textile industry to become more sustainable. And you know about this EU textile strategy, which was launched a year and a half ago, which has different dimensions, also looking to innovation, etc. But the main drive is to essentially push our sector to reduce our environmental footprint. We're talking about waste, we're talking about use of chemicals, we're talking about traceability, so all those elements, but relate to, in the Brussels bubbles, there's always these rankings about which is the worst sector when it comes to environmental footprint. We are high on the list. And so
they always say second, but
we can discuss second, third, whatever. But the point is, we are high.
What's in a number?
Exactly, we are high on the list. We have to recognize that, and so therefore, as Euratex, we endorse, let's say, that fundamental objective to push the industry to be more sustainable. The question, of course, is how to do that. And we're in the middle of this process. So from a regulatory perspective, so this vision to create a more sustainable textile industry in Europe is there. That vision is being translated into a long list of legislation, eco-design, on green claims, on waste framework directives, a lot of pieces of legislation, which as a principle are good, because you need to create a clear framework. You need to define what is sustainable, what is green, what is waste. So you need to have that clear framework. So again, as a principle, it's good. The big question, of course, is how will our companies be able to comply with all those new rules? What will be the cost of complying? And what about our competitors outside the rest of the world? Will they also comply? And if not, does that create an imbalanced competitive system or advantage for non-European companies?
So you need a level playing field internationally to make it work.
Which is recognized, and there's a lot of measures related to market surveillance, for example. But what I tend to say also to the Commission, essentially, is that this EU textile strategy has to become a global textile strategy.
Mhm.
Because if only our European companies make this transition, more sustainable, invest in new water treatment, etc. If only our companies do this and the rest doesn't, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
We're in trouble, and our purpose to save the planet will not happen because
Or
the
you
big
could,
volumes are not in Europe, they are in Asia. So if the whole idea is to let's make a positive contribution towards the planet as a textile industry, then we all need to be together. So again, globalizing the textile strategy is high on our agenda.
Mhm.
So in this context, we work with or we promote a lot this plan in third countries, in Asia, in US, in South America, to push them basically to adopt a similar strategy.
Mhm.
And again, we do this from a fair competition perspective,
Mhm.
but also from a making an impact on the planet perspective. And I would say the Commission, European Commission, agrees with this idea that it cannot just be our European companies making this.
Mhm.
So they say yes, good idea. How to make it happen is always the more difficult question, but this is work in progress.
So, because the last thing you want to avoid is to create, like you have the tax havens in other countries, to create
Exactly.
pollution havens,
Exactly.
and that
Yeah.
European industry moves to these pollution havens because the
Exactly.
regulatory framework is different. So,
and I would say, talking to many partners around the world, we do see how to say emerging textile strategies coming up.
okay.
China has one in the making. Tomorrow I'm speaking at an event in US
Mhm.
virtually to discuss what happens in US, specifically in California and state of New York.
Mhm.
They have their own textile strategies. Brazil is working on something. The Koreans are developing a plan.
Okay.
So this kind of Europe leading the way or showing the way can effect is happening. Again, the devil is in detail. Is it exactly the same what they're doing?
Mhm.
Will they have the same standards? How do we reconcile or how do we ensure compatibility between the European norms and standards that will develop and what, for example, the Americans will do?
Mhm.
So there's a lot to be done, but at least I would say the orientation is going in the right direction.
I think that's an important point because when I speak to some people, it's always the first reaction we are doing a lot, and the rest
Sure.
of the world is not doing anything. So
Yeah.
with this, you also
It's not so black
mention
and
that
white. Yeah.
it's that they are starting to realize
Yeah.
that they have to change as
Yeah.
well, which is
Yeah.
the first step, of course,
Exactly.
realizing that there's a problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, then we talked about connection. Let's talk
Mhm.
about the second point, which is about inspiration.
Mhm.
There's a European project called Regio Greentex.
Okay. Mhm.
So can you maybe talk a little bit about this project, which is coordinated and driven by Euratex?
Sure. So, Regio Greentex is an EU-funded program. It's a 12 million euro project, essentially helping European SMEs to invest in sustainability.
Mhm.
And I generalize a lot, but that's the essence. So, giving a push to companies, small companies who are developing a new technology related to recycling, waste management. It can be different technologies, but it's really giving them an incentive to upscale what they try to do to become a more sustainable textile company. Plus, there's a regional dimension, so we involve regional kind of textile regions around Europe,
Mm-hmm.
including Flanders, by the way, to develop, I would say, a regional vision
Mm-hmm.
in moving the textile industry forward towards sustainability. So the project, again, it's a bit of money. It's connecting different people. It's allowing them to learn from each other, and that's where the inspiration element comes into, which is very important because we see, touring around Europe, talking to many members companies, you see a lot of goodwill. You see a lot of textile companies who want to make this transition towards being more sustainable, to offer high quality, recyclable quality products, etc. Um, but at the same time, they operate in a very, as we said before, very competitive environment.
Mm-hmm.
So a project like with Euratex gives them this little extra push financially,
Mm-hmm.
but also being part of a, I would almost say, of a family where they come together and they discover that other small companies are trying to do the same. They learn from each other. So it's a source of inspiration. It's also, they get some coaching, they get some kind of technical support. So there's all these elements that come with it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's basically a little push to make sure that they can implement successfully what they hope, what they would like to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the project is all about. Radio Green Text is one initiative. There are other initiatives that we are working on. We actually more globally push or lobby with the European Commission to have more funding, to have more European money made available for the textile industry.
Mm-hmm.
Again, they push us to change, basically. We say, okay, let's change, but you need to help us with some support, with some innovation programs, with some SME scaling up programs. So that is kind of the negotiation, if you want, that we're doing to say, okay, we go with you to reorganize our industry, but dear Europe, help us with some support through Rigid Green Text, through other programs, to make sure that these companies, mostly SMEs, can actually, make that transition.
Yeah. For our listeners, where can they find more information about this project? Maybe connect to the partners there.
There's a Regio Green Text website. If you go to the Euratex website, there's a dedicated Google Regio Green Text, and you will find all the information on the partners that are involved. So Ellie.Connect is part of it as well.
Correct.
Offering this platform and what you do. And again, that's hopefully, more than hopefully, I think it will be also a source of inspiration for, again, we have in this project, there are 25 SMEs involved, more or less, scattered around Europe. They all struggle with the same, how do I manage, how do I finance, do I have the best technology? Bringing them together in this platform increases the chance that they will be successful. Yeah. That's the
so it's also the collaboration aspect that comes there as well. Then let's talk about the third pillar, which is an important one for Euratex as well, informing. So providing information, I think, is one of the main focus points of Euratex as well. You already touched a little bit upon that. Why do you believe it's so important to collect and share this information in a very complex industry? Exactly. I can imagine.
Yeah. There is an information deficit in I think in the textile sector in many ways. First, again, coming in relatively new, the data that we have on the textile sector are not sufficiently developed. We talk a lot now these days about recycling, for example, waste management, textile. There are no really good data on textile waste in Europe.
Yeah.
Which is like, how is that possible? So we need to invest as an industry, as an ecosystem, to make sure that we have better data. That's the first point. Then information flow is important in two ways, from Europe down to the companies. And indeed, so there is this textile strategy, there's all these legislation that is coming in a big way. It's critically important to inform, I don't want to say warn, but also warn companies about what is coming, because they need to prepare. They will need to adapt to new norms, new standards. The way this jacket is produced will be different in 5 years. So it's part of our mission, our mandate, our obligation to inform as much as we can companies about this change that is coming.
Mm-hmm.
But equally important is the other way around for me, that we as an industry inform Europe about the textile industry, technology,
Mm-hmm.
what is happening, what is feasible, what is not feasible. Because in this European bubble, there is a lot of ignorance, and we cannot even blame them. But they are sitting in a bubble, in this ivory tower, as you know. People are creating a new legal framework for your company.
Mm-hmm.
These people have never seen a textile company.
Yeah.
Scary. So it's very important when you talk about information communication flows that we bring up, or we bring that information from the field, from the companies into this European bubble. That's of course why Euratex exists. That's why we have members, working groups, committees where experts participate, where we absorb and collect all that information from the field, put it together in an understandable way, and then go and tell the European Commission, say, this is how it works. This is technically, if you want to develop a new eco-design standard, if you want to introduce a digital product passport, how it can work, how it cannot work. But so that upstream information flow is, I would say, at least as important as downstream, telling what happens in Brussels to the Commission and kind of little finger, be careful. So all this together makes indeed, how to say, the information challenge, or the need to invest in information very, very important.
Yeah, so the
And at
bi-directional.
We need to do more, because there is it's a long way. I often say it's a long way between
Mm-hmm.
the European bubble in Brussels and where are we here?
The boots of West Flanders.
The boots of West Flanders. It's far away.
Yeah.
Mentally, I
True.
mean.
Yeah.
And again, it's up to. I'm not putting the blame so much on the Commission. I could, but we have to do our job better.
Yeah.
In structuring ourselves, organizing ourselves, make sure we have strong committees, people, boards.
Mm-hmm.
that work
Platforms
well.
that help you share information, inspiration.
Exactly.
Definitely Ellie.Connect has a role to play there as well.
Totally.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, let's maybe zoom out a little bit and talk about you again. So what we like to share with our listeners as well is a little bit about a lesson learned or a message that you have for audience throughout your journey at Euratex or your whole career. Is there something that you would like to share?
Oh, these personal questions.
It makes a difference in our talks.
Sure. Well, I mean, as I did say in the beginning, so I've been in this European bubble for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And before Textiles, I was working for the Chambers of Commerce, for the VOCA segment, for 25 years, but always at European level. And what's the key to success, or what drives me? I mean, it's of course believe in what you do, be honest with yourself. I know these are slogans, but for me,
slogans are okay.
For me, it's important. It's what makes you keep going. Yeah? And I think as a typical as a Flemish person, you have this flexibility, this mental flexibility to adapt to work in a very complex environment with very different interests, with very different cultural backgrounds. That's why I think in the European bubble, there's many Flemish, Belgian people that are successful, because we have this mental flexibility. We can get along with somebody from Finland, somebody from Italy, somebody from Poland, and bring them together. You can call it diplomacy, you can call it empathy, whatever you want, but I think this is certainly something that I value and that makes me go forward, so to speak. I think that's a strength. If you want to work in this European bubble, that's what you need to have, that kind of mental flexibility, and don't put yourself above, but put yourself among those different backgrounds and profiles, and then at least it works for me.
Okay, that's an interesting and important message to share. Thank you for that. Maybe looking ahead a little bit to the future, how can we make, or can you make Euratex and we to make the whole of the industry future-proof? What aspects should we focus on?
How much time we have left?
2 minutes.
No. I mean, seriously, the textile industry in Europe, it's another slogan, I know, but it is really at a crossroad. We are in this changing world because of the legislation, because of geopolitics, because of the consumer behavior changing somehow. So it's really a big change. So it's critically important to have to think well how we want to design our business model for the future and to be successful, because it could be a great step forward. There could be a great future, but it could also going down. So what is necessary in our vision as Euratex, we focus on 3 big bubbles. One is this new regulatory framework, all the pieces of legislation that are on the table. Work very hard to make sure that we have a high quality legislation. Coherent, clear, predictable. There's many elements, but so the quality of the new framework, which has been created, which didn't exist in the past. Textiles were unregulated. Textiles will be very regulated. So that is the first critical important point to work on. Second, we work on is this support to the industry. So recognize or make sure that our authorities, European, Belgian, Flemish, local, recognize that textiles are important, are a strategic sector of the economy. We make face masks, we make fashion, we make chairs, we make this. So they need to understand that, and they need to give it support. And third, when you focus on this sustainability element, we need to push more on the demand side. So because we are the supply side, we produce, but the consumer, but also the authorities.
We are consumers as well.
Sure, but the consumer today doesn't buy, doesn't pay for sustainable textiles. The government, authorities, who are also consumers in public procurement, only buy the cheapest face masks or the cheapest uniforms of the army. So
they are also consumer.
They're also consumer. So make sure that the demand side for sustainable textiles, high quality sustainable textiles, ideally made in Europe, is growing. So good laws, support to the industry, supply side, and make sure there is enough demand or a bigger demand side. That's the puzzle that we are trying to put together.
Okay, and if you would be able to end with one question or one message to the audience who is listening now, what would be your call to action?
No, well, the message is that, again, as a relative newcomer, I discovered a very fascinating textile industry in Europe, going through many changes, but I firmly believe in a great future that we have. But we need to maybe pull down some of these walls that we have within our universe, work together, and then it sounds like a slogan, but I genuinely believe that there is a bright future for European textile companies.
Great. Thank you for that, and thank you for sharing your insights and of course your passion as well. So I think good fundamentals and competitiveness of the industry are important, and creating a level playing field to making this or rebuilding this great industry in Europe. Thank you very much for being here today. Thank you to our listeners and viewers for being here for the first time or again. Please subscribe if you want to follow what is happening on Ellie.Connect. You can review as well our Ellie.Talks podcast. Please share any insights or ideas we have, and please stay tuned for our next Ellie.Talks episode, which will bring a lot of more engaging interviews in the textile and fashion industry. And let's do great things together.